Hello and welcome to Take Back Time. My name is Penny Zenker and I'm your host. And today we're going to talk about money, right? Money is one of those things that we love and we fear, or lots of in between. Sometimes it's not talked about, and there's a lot of beliefs that we have around money. So I'm excited to have a money expert, money mindset expert, and a profit leader. So Samantha Varner, she is here with us today, and she believes that without profit, business is just an expensive hobby. So true. Sam Varner she is the founder of She Collective, and she's on a mission to show business owners just how they can live full and robust lives while building massively profitable businesses. And for you that are listening that aren't building your own companies, we're going to talk about how it affects you in the organization and really going after what you're worth and asking for what you're worth in an organization. So just keep that in mind. Sam has 15 years of experience, 15 plus years of experience in public relations, sales, and business development. And here she is today. So welcome, Sam, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here today.
So money. How exciting for us to be talking about money, right? My money belief is that there's always a way to make money. And I know that has served me in my life, because there's always more money to be had. Like, you know, there is an abundance and we can all make money at the same time. You know, what are some of your beliefs? Did they change over time? Because obviously you're doing this, and I don't know if you're doing this because you had a money issue in your mindset or what. So tell us a little bit about your history and your beliefs around money.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely right now hold that belief that there is always money to be made. And I will chat with my clients all the time about, even if all of us are sitting in the same room, going after the same clientele with the same product or service, there's enough for everybody, right? So
Totally.
But I also know that I used to have a corporate job. So I was in a corporate environment for years and years before I had my kids and moved countries and ended up coming to Texas and starting my own business. And one of the things that I found is so many female business owners in particular, but the men are not immune to this, live in that world of, I don't really know if I can make enough, or I'm hesitant to make more money, or I'm certainly hesitant to ask for more money. And there was a lot of shame around feeling like you should already know. You should already know the answers. You should know how to do this. You shouldn't need help. This is something we should just innately know as humans. As those of us who make money know, that's not the case. We need to be taught, and we need to be encouraged and coached through that.
And so when you say shame around asking or feeling like we should already know, I didn't really understand that. So can you, because maybe people are feeling that, or maybe they didn't understand. What do you mean by that? Like, because we're afraid to ask questions, or?
Yes, that's a huge part of it. So specifically for business owners, let's just give the example. And for those of us that are listening that are not business owners, think about it from your own personal finances. There are experts out there, right, that you can go to get help in these areas. And the reality is, we often are very reluctant to put up our hand and ask what feels like the stupid question, or feels like the question we should already know. And what that ends up doing is it really hinders people in their ability to generate more wealth or more revenue, as the case may be, because there is that feeling of shame comes around the idea that we should already have the answers in terms of, how do I manage my money properly? How do I balance my checkbook? How do I balance my books, right? All
Those
of those
types of
pieces.
things, right? How do I create a budget or stay within a budget? Yeah. Okay, gotcha. Because, where I was going and thinking before you talked about that was that there's a lot of people don't stand in their worth. They don't want to ask for more money because they'll be afraid that they're fired, or they don't think that they're worth it or deserve it. There's a lot of that I hear that people, and that is sort of a general belief. I'm not enough, right? It's like one of our deep seated things that can hold all of us back. How how does that affect people in their money situation?
So much, right? That feeling of imposter syndrome is alive and well in most of us, right? So it affects us when we know that, or we're starting to feel resentful for the work that we're doing because we're not being compensated to the point that we deem to be acceptable. And most people seriously are still underselling themselves anyway. So when you think like I'm worth more, you're worth more and then some, right? And we get into that position where we do feel like the only option if I ask for more money is that I'm inevitably going to be fired or this client is going to stop working with me, as opposed to acknowledging that, yes, you are indeed worth more money. The tasks and the job that you're performing are, of course, worth more, and we're going to compensate you accordingly. And we get very in our heads about what that means about us and whether or not we are being pushy or salesy or greedy, right? All of those words start to come up in our vocabulary when we're starting to think about how do we kind of work for ourselves in getting more money into our lives? How do we pull more money into our lives? The easiest and most low hanging fruit for corporate people or people that have a business is to talk to your current provider of cash for more, based on, of course, performance and when you talk about those things and show up how you are meant to show up.
So, we're living in such an interesting time because there are a lot of people that are leaving and are saying, no, I'm demanding this amount of money. If you're not going to give it to me, I'm going to go somewhere else. And that's kind of a double-edged sword too, though, because people just out of college, for instance, they might be overestimating the value of their skill set and asking for more than what many companies are able to pay for, because different companies have different budgets for the same position. So how do you balance that? How do you know when you're asking for the right amount that's good for your skills and that makes good sense?
Yeah, I think one of the best ways to do it is create a wins list. So if you sit down and write out all of the things that you have either achieved or created or were as a result of your actions in your job or in your business, it allows you to really reflect on how are you then in comparison to your job description, for instance, how are you measuring up? Are you above and beyond what the expectations of the role and the original salary are? Or are you still underperforming in areas and you can evaluate that, right? If you are missing big chunks of that, then it is probably you want to be careful. You don't want to go and demand more money if you aren't indeed exceeding the expectations of the role. And I do think, that being said, say that with like a little caveat, is I think corporations, especially large and well-established and old corporations, are really slow to get with the fact that there are changes in what people's expectations are in an environment of employment now too. So I do think that there is a bigger push for, I don't need to be 100% qualified for any particular role in order to do a great job very quickly, right? There is the legacy of being able to just quickly learn a new task, put it into motion, get it done. Those sorts of things. I think there is a fine line between having to already know how to do something and how to show up as a go-getter and somebody who is going to learn and thrive immediately in order to be a higher value participant in a team.
Two different skill sets, right? Depending on the
Yeah,
role. I want to go back to what you said
absolutely.
about the wins list.
Mhm.
I really like that idea. And it doesn't matter whether you have your own business or whether you're working in someone else's business, because what a great opportunity, to build confidence in the wins that you've had. So it builds confidence. You get to see your competency level and where where's the gap in towards where you want to go in the organization. But it's a great conversational tool as well. Like I find that sometimes when people get to their year-end review and they're not happy with how they were rated, well, if they're not prepared for that, to be able to show, oh, hold on, let's take a look at my wins here. I
Mhm.
think it's important to come prepared and to be able to have that conversation with that confidence and that knowledge of where you have added value, and be open to listen to where, you've maybe not performed as expected, but at least you have that as a conversation. I think that's a huge. And then if you're the entrepreneur, you can use that when you're talking to new prospects and validating your rates and things like that. So I love that wins list.
Yeah, I think especially in the corporate world, so often we don't reflect on what our resume looks like or what our increased skill set is until we go to look for another job, right? It's only when we're like, oh, back at this resume building point, and I want this job now. Now I'm looking at it in comparison, as opposed to making sure that we're keeping a list of everything that we have grown and achieved and increased along the way. And your employer doesn't always see all of those pieces, right? Or they don't necessarily realize what your role is in those upgrades. So it's important to make sure everybody sees that, right? In a way that is helpful for you in your career development too.
Yeah. And when we're talking about, in corporate, as people might get a promotion, very often companies don't give you the promotion that, they may give you added responsibilities, but they don't always match the pay, right? Because they're like, oh, you've been with the organization, we can't jump you that high. So they're not market relevant. And I do think what do you think stops people from speaking up and asking for what this job is worth on the market? Because it's a disservice to the organization too, because so many people leave because they're not compensated properly, and that costs the organization so much more money. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and I think there's two pieces. I think that piece right there of the fact that have an idea in your head of what it costs your employer to get somebody into that position. That will put you in a much more comfortable place, even if you're not going to be using that as a bullet point when you talk to somebody. But when you know that in order to replace you, they are going to have to put out a certain amount of money, it makes your shoulders relax. It makes you feel a little bit more confident to be like, you know what, I can actually demand what this role is out on the marketplace, right? So that's first and foremost. And then the number one reason that people in a corporate job are fearful is they could lose their job, and they're sitting in a position where they have one client, right? So if you say that everybody's got a certain number of clients, whether you're in corporate or not, if you are in a corporate job, your employer is your single client. And so you are very much at the beck and call of that client. So it is something to be, there has to be a little bit of like understanding of where is the corporate environment, what's currently happening with the budget, where is that? But the vast majority of us don't actually ask for raises when we get promoted. We just assume they'll give it to us if we deserve it. And I think we need to start remembering that they're operating under a business. And if you don't ask for it, that's cost savings for them, and they're happy with that.
Don't ask, you don't get. Can we talk a little bit about language? How would I ask for that?
You definitely want to go in with an example of what you have done for the company, how you have performed, how you exceeded expectations. You want to make sure that you're tracking things as much as you can. Depending on the role, this can be hard, but numerical associations is really important. When you're going to negotiate salary or bonus structure or something like that, you want to be able to show, I understand what my financial contribution is, and therefore there is financial room within this company, or there should be, to compensate me accordingly. So if you're creating more sales, or if your marketing program is creating an excess on the back end, all of these things we all know have checks and balances in an organization. They're very rarely doing things without some ROI attached to it so that they can track their metrics.
Right.
You want to at least be familiar on a baseline of what those metrics are so that you can speak that same language in the circumstance.
So would you go in with a specific number in mind? So you know what's on the market, you know what they're telling you that they're going to give you. Would you go in and say, based on the market, and here's what I'm looking for?
Yeah. And I would use it based on the market, based on your knowledge of the company. And then I would also base it on what you need, right? there has to be that factor in there, especially if you're one of these people that are potentially on the cusp of like, I'm going to leave this corporation if I don't get compensated fairly. You don't want to do this in a threatening manner, but you do want to say, in order for me to feel like a valued member of the team and to continue to push to the same level that I have been to raise the blah, 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 whatever that is, this would feel like fair compensation to me.
I love that, right? This would feel like fair compensation. And
Yeah,
and
and
they
it's
can
not
say,
a
well,
hard
we don't
number,
feel
'cause
that
they
way,
can-
but you know,
yeah.
at least it's not said in a threatening way. I love that. And I wanted to give people some language around that, because sometimes it's just that, is that it's an emotional thing to talk about. And if they're not prepared with what they're going to say, then they don't say it, or they say it the wrong way, and it ends up being a conflict. So, you know, that can be done in role play too, right? But to have some of those,
Absolutely.
those statements are fantastic. So, so we talked about the wins list and asking for more money. What else is a common challenge that you see that people have within their money mindset that we didn't yet cover?
I think the other piece is, and this a little bit goes along with what we've been saying, but actually being really comfortable to talk money, right? Being really comfortable to say the numbers. And people will get very tripped up on that, right? Whether you're an entrepreneur that is like, you're in a sales conversation, this client is interested in what your service or your product is, and you get to that point and they say, okay, well, what would it look like to work with you? And people stumble and bumble around that, and they feel awkward. And then the client is questioning your legitimacy, questioning whether you are competent, all of these things that are not fair to be questioning, but nonetheless they are.
Right. It creates doubt in the people you're speaking with, right? If you're not confident and clear about what your rates are.
Yeah. And it's the same in an employment situation. So that same conversation we were just talking about, people are usually pretty good right up until the like number. And then they get really tongue tied, right? And so one of the things that I talk about with clients is I will say to them, I want you to get to the point that you're so comfortable that the number rolls off your tongue like your phone number, right? Somebody says like, hey, how do I get a hold of you? You can just spit that number right out. So one of the ways, and my clients always laugh at me when I tell them to do this, is every time you go to the washroom and you're standing there washing your hands, say it in the mirror. Say it in the mirror as many times as you're, all of us are drinking more water and all the things. So we know where we are. We're there regularly. Say those things until you are smooth and it's comfortable. Say it to your cat, say it to your dog, say it to your kids, say it to your spouse until they're like, enough already. But you want to get to the point where you can just say it to anybody. The mailman walks by and you're like, hey, by the way, I charge this much. And he's like, okay, ma'am, that's great. Thank you. It was weird. You said that confidently, but I still don't need that service.
Right? After you say
yes, and then
shut
be quiet.
up, right? That's the thing, right? Because then
don't
sometimes
keep doing that mindless babble, right? Yep, that we do when we're awkward.
Right. That's great.
Yeah.
That is, I think that is really important, right? To be able to hear yourself say it and be confident in saying it. That's a really powerful item. So there's that. And is there anything else? So there's putting together your win list. There's knowing what, the comparison is out on the market. There's being confident in saying it. What else? Is there anything else that we're missing?
I think when it comes to the money mindset, I think what at the very beginning of that, what you want to be thinking about is, what am I thinking? When I start to think about money, what am I thinking about? We spoke about abundance at the beginning, right? What is your mindset about your earning potential, or how many clients might be out there, or why that last person said no to you, right? You want to start to catch yourself. We all have a level of negative self-talk that is happening in the back, and it's almost happening like below the surface and we don't even notice. The first step to really managing your mindset is acknowledging where it currently is and what kind of things are being said. So paying attention to that is like people often want to like, I want to fix my money mindset, or I want to fix my mindset in general immediately. But first you have to know what you're saying. First you have to know what's happening. So
Right.
catching those dialogues that you're having, or those gut reactions that you have in a circumstance, will start to just have you go like, oh wait, is that factual? Right? Is that actually true that he thinks I'm not worth it and would never pay that much, and it's ridiculous that I even had the audacity to ask it? That's not necessarily true. But just paying attention to the way you speak about money and the way you think about money. Things are too expensive. I can never afford that. I wish I could do that, but I have no way of gaining more income. All of those thoughts that are running in the back, start questioning it. It's not factual. It's just things that we're telling ourselves to keep ourselves safe. And if people can really start to catch on to those details, it will start to transition on its own.
Yeah, just paying attention, right? It's amazing how powerful it is to really be conscious about our self-talk, and what it is we are saying and believing, because we do have more control than we think we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that self-awareness piece, right? Which is can be a hard thing. When I first started in the coaching realm, my personal thoughts around all of the self-coaching and thinking about my mindset, I was like, this is very woo-woo. I don't really know if this works, right? I wasn't bought into it at all. And now over the years, it is incredible how much control I have over what I'm thinking, and then how much that is a direct line to the results I get every time. You start to be like, oh, I can kind of like tweak this to the way that I want it to be in my business at any given time.
Yeah, I like you did a little movement for those who are listening. She did a little dial movement. And I think it's so true that we can change, if it's a radio dial, right? We can change the channel. We can change the channel on our thoughts as well, is just reframe it and look at it and tell ourselves a different story and look at it from a different perspective, right? And then all of a sudden, all of the beliefs and the priorities and our expectations, they all change with the perspective. So that's fascinating to me, right? How with a simple switch, we can really have a completely different set of thinking and beliefs, and what gets uploaded in that moment. It's incredible. You know, one of the things that I noticed for myself, for instance, like as things started to increase and I started to increase my rates, like I was like, well, can I deliver the same service and ask for that much more? Right. And that was a thing, like, oh, I need to add more value. How am I adding enough value, and so forth. Right. And, you know, what I found for myself, right, is we talked about some of these things. It's the comparison. What are other people on the market who are delivering? What are they getting paid for their service? And if other people are paying them and you're delivering the same result or better, then clearly someone else is asking for it. You can ask for it. And like you said, it's just to know the value. If you can put a monetary amount to it, and then just stand in your confidence. I was surprised. I mean, I really, over the years, had like a philosophy of doubling my rates and getting to a place where I was getting paid for the professional experience that I've created. So, but it is our and it's not for, and I think people need to get away from this hour type of thinking. If they're a service provider, you should provide the value of the service and focus on that, and not the value of an hour, because that hour you're bringing all that expertise that took you years, right? How many degrees and whatever it is that you got to get to where you are. That's what people are paying for. They're not paying for every, minute. They're paying for the result.
Yeah. And the second that you start selling yourself from a position of the result, as opposed to from a position of this is what you get from like a tangible thing, right? So for me, I can talk to people about, okay, so with my coaching, you get a one-to-one session every week, and it's 45 minutes and it's on Zoom. And then you get to connect with me on Slack, and you get to do that as much as you need to. And these are all the like bullet points of what is included. But nobody cares.
Right.
Nobody actually cares what the tangibles are. They care about like, I want to make more money in my business. How do I do that? Do you know how to do that? Will you teach me? Can I learn it? That's what they're looking for. They don't care if it means we do a skipping exercise every single day up and down their street, and then they must dye their hair pink. Okay, all right, if that's what
That's
I
gonna
need to
get me
do.
the
Most
result.
people are like, sweet, I will do that. I guess pink hair is the thing, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Fantastic. We are at the end of our session here. Sam, how can people reach you? If you can give us your,
The
it'll
best-
be in the show notes, but go ahead and tell us.
Mhm. The best place is to come visit me over on Instagram. It is Sam the Profit Coach. So slide into my DMs, just send me a message and say, you know what, something caught my ears listening to this podcast, and I want to talk to you about it, or I want to ask that question. I am in there all the time, and I want to be able to connect with you and put you in connection with the right solution.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being here.
You are welcome. This was wonderful.
And thank you all for being here. This was an important conversation. As a matter of fact, I think this is probably the only podcast that we really talked, maybe we've talked about it before, but money mindset is absolutely critical. And that you really understand your worth, your value, and you're not afraid to ask for what you deserve and the experience that you've created. So I hope this has empowered you. It's given you some language, it's given you some tools and tips to be able to use. And that's what's most important. So I hope this is going to be of great value to you going forward. My name is Penny Zenker, and this is Take Back Time. We'll see you in the next episode.